أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Welcome to Receiving Nur Weekly Quran Study. We are continuing to journey in Surah al-Sajdah. This will be inshallah our 10th session. And without further delay, I turn to Dr. Yamina, who is going to lead us in tonight's session. I believe we had some questions or comments from last class that we hoped would carry over today, so we can start with that also. But I will turn the microphone to Dr. Yamina, who's going to lead us. And please join us with your comments and questions. Jazakumullah khair, Dr. Yamina.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. You mentioned last week's question at the end, but to tell you the truth, I don't remember what it was and I didn't take note. So if anyone wants to repeat it, otherwise I can take it later whenever you are ready, inshallah. Is that okay? Good?
Yeah, either way, Dr. Yamina, I think it was a question by Sister Maha. I think she's in the session if she would like to bring it up now or later, up to her. Maha, you're muted, by the way, if you are talking. Okay, so then maybe she'll bring it later. We can go ahead. Thank you.
So last week we stopped at Ayah 14, which was about the description of the disbelievers that were also described as mujrimeen, criminals. And in the following ayah or ayat verses, the believers are described. So when I say ayah, it may, in this case, it's an ayah of this surah. Surah is chapter, ayah is a verse of the Quran, a unit of the Quran. And the word ayah is also refers to the signs in the creation. So it's the same word in Arabic or in the Quranic language. Because a verse, like a verse in poetry, is bait in Arabic. So the Quran, in the Quran, particularly, the word verse is not used. So then the believers are described. After the disbelievers, the believers are described, and it starts with ayah 15. I will just go through the English interpretation / translation, so we get an idea of what's going on, and then we start ayah by ayah, as we usually do, inshallah. So starting from ayah 15, we're told the people who truly believe in our ayat, so our always refers, God is speaking, so it refers to God. The people who truly believe in our ayat are only those who, when they are reminded of them, they fall down prostrating and glorifying the sustainer with praise, and they are not arrogant. So this is a sajdah ayah. Either we can make sajdah right now, means we fall into prostration, or we will do it at the end. It doesn't take long time. Would you like to make sajdah right now? And this ayah will be repeated. Actually, we didn't read the original, but I will read it. So keep in mind that we have a sajdah to perform, inshallah. In ayah, the next ayah, 16, is whose sides, so the same people, the people who truly believe in our ayat, are only those who, and the list carries on, whose sides restlessly shun their beds to call on to their sustainer in fear and hope, and who spend from what we provide for them. No soul knows what joy and delight is kept hidden from them for them as a reward for what they used to do. So is someone who believes equal to someone who is iniquitous? No, they are not equal. As for those who believe and do righteous deeds, they have gardens of rest awaiting for them as a reward for what they used to do. But as for those who are iniquitous, their home is the fire. Whenever they want to come out of it, they are returned back into it, and they are told, taste the torment of the fire which you used to deny. We shall certainly make them taste a nearer torment prior to the greater torment, so that perhaps they might return. And who is more unjust than the one who is reminded of his sustainers' signs, ayat, and then turns away from them? Truly, we shall inflict retribution on the criminals. And the word again is mujrimeen, like the one used in ayah 12. And you see how ayah 15 was talking about the first quality of the true believers is that when they are reminded of the ayat of God, they fall into prostration. But in ayah 22, we are told, well, not but, because we're told who can be more unjust than the one who is reminded of his sustainer's ayat and turns away from them. So transgression is doing the opposite of what the true believer does. So I'll start again from ayah 15, inshallah, where we're told the people who truly believe in our ayat are only. So the ayah is, إنما يؤمن بآياتنا الذين إذا ذكروا بها خروا سجدا وسبحوا بحمد ربهم وهم لا يستكبرون. The إنما at the beginning of the ayah is used to say only those. So there is a it denotes restriction, let's say. And it's very important because we're saying those who believe in our ayat are only these people. If you don't have these qualities, this ayah is saying you don't believe. That's why it's very important, because it's attracting our attention, and it comes at the very beginning of the ayah. So in a way, in order to claim iman, to have faith, and to qualify as believing, because a verb is used here, not a noun, إنما يؤمن, those who believe, to qualify as believing, people need to display the following behavior, not only in ayah 15, but also 16 and the rest. And in ayah 15, this behavior is when they are reminded of the ayat of God, our ayat, God speaking, they fall down prostrating and glorify their Rabb with praise, with hamd, and they are not arrogant. Actually, they are not arrogant is also a verb in Arabic. Otherwise, if they don't have all these qualities, they are not true believers. And this point of what true belief is and who qualifies to be the true believer is repeated in the Quran. And if it's repeated, it means it's important and it's attracting our attention, because it's relevant. Not only it's important and it's relevant because I could be imagining that I am a believer where I'm not. So here it's giving me something very practical. Here it is. Everyone can look at themselves and use it to gauge where they stand. So to have Iman is to be certain because we have witnessed the truth of what we believe in. We have made the Shahada. And what is the Shahada? The Shahada of Tawheed, the affirmation of Tawheed. La ilaha, nothing is worth worshipping, nothing can create anything, nothing is the source of anything except illallah, except God. It means that we witness that all things proceed from one single source. In life, this is going to happen progressively. We cannot, in one day, at one time, make sure that we witness that everything is from God. We do. Theoretically, we can do that. But in order to actually confirm this, experience this reality, we need to repeat this whenever something happens, especially when something comes our way, because it's easier to say everything belongs to God, everything is from God out there. But when it concerns us personally, then it becomes more intricate, more complicated, and more subtle. And that's where we need to reflect. If we learned how to reflect on the ayat out there, then we will also stop, pause, and reflect in whatever is happening around us. And in that interaction, in that experiencing the result of our reflection, we will, inshallah, witness the ayat, and we will be able to make the shahada, meaning that we witness that the ayat in the creation indicate one single source of all the attributes that we observe in the world, that we seek, that we long for in the world. Without going through this process of witnessing, as we are taught in the Quran, we are taught in the Quran how to reflect and how to go through the process, how to make shahada. Without going through this process of witnessing, just by claiming there is no God but God, if we have not confirmed this affirmation, if we have not confirmed it, experienced it, lived it, then there is no true Iman. But only what there is a claim, is a conjecture, surmising, speculation, but definitely not Iman. Iman needs a certain amount of certainty based on evidences in the world, observed, lived, experienced evidences. And if you remember in Surah Yusuf, it's not the only place, but it came to my mind because we studied it together. In ayah 103 to 106. 106 is relevant here because we are told there, and most of the people believe in God only as mushrik, only while committing shirk. This is like most people. I could be one of them. So we need to take such guidance. These verses, this ayat, are coming, speaking to each one of us, and they are coming to help us, to guide us. It means I am very likely to be in that state, and I'm not even aware of it, that this ayah comes and tells me, what are you doing? Wake up. So starting from 103 in Surah Yusuf, which is Surah 12, we're told most people howsoever you might so desire, are not going to believe. However much you want it, وَمَا أَكْثَرُ النَّاسِ وَلَوْ حَرَصْتَ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ. Although you do not ask them for any reward, this is only a reminder unto all humankind. When the prophets, or the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, for us, brings us this message, he's not asking us for anything in return. He's not making money out of it or anything. It says it is a reminder unto all humankind. It's a reminder for us. Ayah 105, how many are the signs in the heavens and on earth which they pass by without paying any heed? And in Arabic, it's understood this is a rhetorical question, meaning there are lots of ayat. Most of the ayat, they pass by without paying any heed. And then comes 106, where we are told, وَمَا يُؤْمِنُ أَكْثَرُهُمْ بِاللَّهِ إِلَّا وَهُمْ مُشْرِكُونَ. Only the way they believe in God, they only believe with shirk. And mushrikun is ism fa'al, so it is telling us a state of being in shirk. It's not like, it's not a verb. It's not that they make or they do shirk from time to time. No, they are mushrikeen. That's who they are. It means they are not even aware of what they are doing. They are in a state of shirk. It means in a state of unawareness of Tawheed, of who the Rabb, their Rabb, and the Rabb of everything is. So in Ayah 103, we're told that most people, most of the time, don't believe in the message of the Quran, and therefore don't believe in the meaningfulness of the ayat, the signs in the creation, in the world. Although they are not asked for anything, for a reward or anything in return of the message. It is only a reminder to all humankind. 104, meaning that it is people themselves who benefits from the message, not the messengers. For instance, in the case of Surah Yusuf, the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, who benefits from that surah, from that chapter? Who benefits from knowing how the story of Yusuf alayhi salam teaches us that every event is an ayah, meaning it is a sign carrying, bearing beautiful meaning, beautiful messages from our caring Rabb, even in that story that outwardly looks so sad and so ugly. Clearly, it's us, because we find ourselves in situations like Yusuf alayhi salam. Now, in order to benefit, truly benefit from this message, we need to grasp the meaning, then we need to understand the significance of that meaning, of the message, and we need to decide and choose to practice it in our lives. And it's only when we start practicing in our life that we start experiencing its reality. We cannot be sure that the story of Yusuf alayhi salam is truly as it claims to be, or as we think we know, unless we actually experience its reality in our own life. Because only then we can witness its truth, its relevance to our life, its relevance to the reality of everything. Then we can confirm its truthfulness And then we can know with certainty that whatever occurs, whatever happens in our life, whatever happens to us, is happening with purpose, with compassion, with meaning, even when we cannot understand the meaning because we're so limited. And then we can trust our Rabb because we start knowing him as our Rabb. We start knowing him with his beautiful names. And when we start knowing our Rabb that way, then we can trust him and trust whatever he sends our way. And then we will fear no one else except him because we will have understood, we will have surrendered to the reality, to the fact that he has the last word. The last word belongs to him alone. So the message is not as we may imagine, that we need to believe in God because we are Muslims. We need to believe in the Quran because we are Muslims. I read the story of, and you remember how we read the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. Be with integrity, because otherwise it starts by saying this is the most beautiful story, and then there is a story of this child who is being abused by his brothers. They even think of killing him. They throw him away in a well. He is sold into slavery, from slavery to jail, and like, what's beautiful about this? Unless we ask these questions, it means, when I'm asking this question, it means I want to understand, and I want to practice it in my life too. But if I say, okay, it says it's beautiful, then it's beautiful, and do not say it's not beautiful, even if it looks not beautiful to you, because then you would have contradicted the Quran. Then we won't learn anything. Then that's just claiming, that's just speculation, that's not what Iman is. Because we wouldn't have witnessed any ayah. That would be, let's call it superficial belief. It starts from not denying the existence of God, to maybe from time to time having some glimpses of something from God, so knowing him somehow, but forgetting him most of the time. So it is a kind of belief, but it is still superficial, because it is not corroborated with evidence from the creation, from the creational ayat, from the ayat in the world. And in that case, we won't be able to see the relevance of the message to our daily life. It seems like it's there. I read it to get barakah. I read it to get a reward, but it has not, as if it's not direct guidance for me here and now in my daily life. And so in that case, we want also realize how the Quran is healing to our pains, to our wounds, and we will remain unaware of the signs are not only in the creation, but primarily, firstly, in the Quran itself. They will be like verses. They won't be functioning as signs, as we talked about it at the very beginning of this surah, when we talked about the meaning of ayah, especially with the disconnected letters. It won't, each unit of the Quran or of the chapters of the Quran won't function as an ayah to me. It won't take me anywhere. I would be just repeating words that have some meaning, but very limited. It's not, mostly it's not going to be deeply relevant and connected to what I'm going through in life. And so that's why let's say we remain unaware of the ayat, the signs around us, or at least we live our life as though we were not surrounded with ayat. We were not surrounded with messages from our Rabb in everything. Everything that happens, that is occurring here and now, is speaking, is glorifying God. How is it glorifying Him? How is it praising Him? How is it telling us about Him, about eternal life, about the hereafter, about Akhirah? And this is what Ayah 105 of Surah Yusuf tells us, how many signs in the heavens and on earth they pass by without paying any heed. It means they don't pay heed to most ayats. So true Iman leads to gradually live more and more with the awareness that everything, all events, are ayat. They are telling us about the compassion, the beauty, the generosity, the knowledge, the power, the wisdom of their maker, our Rabb, our host in this world. And that's what it means to live with Tawheed. That's what it means to perform the Shahada. And that's what it means to not turn to pay heed to the ayat and not turn our back to them. Otherwise, we may not deny the existence of God. We may even know somehow God somehow we feel it. But if we pass by the ayat around us without paying heed, then we won't know Him with His beautiful names. We won't be able to know Him as our Rabb. And by know, I don't mean some cogitation, intellectual information, knowing. No, I mean how we feel in our heart matters, because that's how we live, not how we know in our head. How we know in our head is important because that's where we start. But if we stop there, then it's not going to work. But how it feels, we want to know Him. It won't feel like He is my Rabb here now. It will feel like something else is taking care of me. I need something other than God to sustain me, to be happy, to be healthy, whatever my need is at that moment. And so we won't know Him as our generous, our compassionate host. We won't feel like guests in this world. And when you're a guest, the most important needs are being taken care of. So we don't live in that fear of surviving, of subsisting. And when we are living with that fear, we can't go up and live from the heart and the soul. Because we can't trust. And that unknowing, that unawareness leads to what we are told in the Quran is shirk. And that's what Ayah 106 says. We are told, and most of the people do not believe. Actually, it says, وَمَا يُؤْمِنُ أَكْثَرُهُمْ. Yes, do not believe except as mushrik, as committers of shirk, as associating others with God. Yes, there is God, but of course you need this, you need that, you need everything else. But everything else not as ayat telling about God and reminding us of God, but as small mini sources, as if they existed on their own separately. So here again, knowing is only the first step. I said not knowing, and it is necessary, but not sufficient. We need, after we know, we need to decide, to make the choice to live with that knowledge. And that knowledge, that knowing, let's say, because it's not even knowledge before we live with it, that knowing will not help anyone. It's like having a key and not using it. So we need to choose to and make the decision to live with, to practice that knowledge. And if we procrastinate and then forget, and then for some reason end up not living with that mindfulness, with that awareness that all things and events are ayat, meaning their ayat means that whatever happens with purpose, with meaning, with wisdom, with compassion. Then when we forget their ayat, it means when forgetting here again is not only in our mind, but it could be even if I write it down, but if it doesn't feel like that, if I am not nourishing that, reflecting, just putting down prayers around, but never learning to reflect and internalize and absorb it and digest it so that it becomes my reality, then the resulting state of being is mindlessness, is ghafla, is forgetting the reality, is living in a perception of the world that does not match the reality. And in the Quran, again and again, we are told why we fall into ghafla. Isn't that nice that we are told what our problem is? I find it so compassionate and so healing, because sometimes we may have a good intention and say, what's going on? It's like a vicious circle. You try so hard and it feels like someone is pulling you back to where you started. And here it says, this is because you're missing something very important. And the ayat says, truly, as for those who do not hope to meet us, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ لَا يَرْجُونَ لِقَاءَنَا, and content themselves with the life of this world. This is what's a key expression. وَرَضُوا بِالْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَاطْمَأَنُّوا بِهَا. They content themselves with the life of this world and do not look beyond it. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ آيَاتِنَا غَافِلُونَ. So these people are the ghafilun, the heedless, of those who are heedless of our ayat. Why are they heedless of our ayat? Because they do not hope to meet us. So that's not in their planning. Akhirah, what will happen to me afterwards, is not there. And they content themselves with the life of this world. If we are careful, if we are honest with ourselves, we will see that deep down, we don't have to be the wealthiest and have everything we want. I have to try and then I will know. Then we'll waste all our life trying all kinds of paths. No, we've been given imagination, alhamdulillah. I can stop and just imagine myself having everything I wish to have. And so let's say I have everything. And then we have that question, that innate question within us, because our soul, remember, we were told it was ayah 9 or 10, it is God who breathed of his ruh, of his spirit into us. So the human soul or the human spirit is from God. It knows God. It longs for eternity. So it cannot be satisfied with this worldly life, this transient life. And so here, not only they content themselves, but they are satisfied with it and they don't look any further. Wherever we do that, whenever we do that, there that becomes our blind spot, and we can't see the ayat there. We cannot see the ayat if we are not honest that our heart, our soul longs for eternity, and we look for it in this world. Will we look for eternal happiness, eternal fulfillment? And if we're content with this transient, passing, worldly, whatever, we can't even call it fulfillment, but let's say achievements, whatever, and we invest in it as though it were everlasting, then we will miss all the ayat, we will miss all the messages. Because it's the constant flow of beings coming and leaving, the transience of everything that speaks to us, that tells us that there is more to this world than what we see. And then we start asking questions and then we start listening. But if we already think we know, if we already think this is it, then even if we learn by heart that everything is an ayah, it won't feel like an ayah, because we are already, our heart is already full of with something else. There is no, how do you say, emptiness that needs to be filled. So we want, if there's no need, there is no grasping, there is no tasting, there is no appreciating. So here it is. This is what al-ghafilun are, the heedless, is those who forget that everything is passing and impermanent. They are unaware of that, and they focus on the impermanent as though it were permanent. Invest all their life in this impermanent world without thinking of the future or the result. Subhanallah. So if it feels like something that pertains to our life, whatever, is not an ayah, it feels, I'm saying, because we know it is an ayah, and it feels like it should be an ayah, but it doesn't feel like an ayah at all to me, then in that particular area, we are open to shirk. And so what to do? How do we dissolve that shirk? How do we not follow the path of shirk? By reflecting. We need to decide to start reflecting and seeing the face of God not in that area, because in that area, if we have attachment and it's sensitive and we don't want to let go, we don't have to start there. We need to start softening our heart and opening our heart in other areas of our life where we are not as sensitive, we are not as attached, and start reflecting and seeing the face of God, wajh Allah, the face of God, the face of things that look to God, that look to the beautiful names of God in other areas of our life, until our perception of the world start changing. And as our perception of the world and of events change, eventually our perception of ourselves start also transforming. Inside us also start. We start being more aware that we are not separate, independent being out there. We start being aware that we are being right here and now, we are being sustained, we are being taken care of. Our life needs to be sustained, and it is sustained. So we start going out of ghafla slowly, and it becomes easier and easier to surrender to that reality of being a abd, of being dependent on the creativity, on the sustaining of our Rabb, of God, of our Maker. And we become also more and more familiar with our Rabb through the reflection of his beautiful names in the world. We start getting to know him more, get familiar with him more. It becomes easier and easier to trust him, to surrender, to let go, because before we can't let go, because it feels if I let go, I will fall into nothingness. Because in my heart, I'm not certain that I have a sustainer. And so the more we know, we get familiar with this reality in areas of our life that are not sensitive to us, the more it will become easier for those knots, let's say, like in our life, we have, especially in some areas, we have like knots in our hearts. They start untying, and it becomes easier and easier to surrender, even in those previously problematic areas of our life, inshallah. The healing, the stronger we are in Iman, the more healing there will be, and the more we'll be able to surrender in all other areas. Um, so also we know growing up, many of us heard, make dua, write duas everywhere. I remember visiting some places where people had duas, stickers with duas everywhere. So from one aspect, from one perspective, it's very good. But from another perspective, you find that most of the time, people don't really know the meaning of that dua. They know, literally, they know, of course, what it means. But really, what does it mean that to surrender to God? How do I surrender? How do I know him as my Rabb? How do I trust him and not something else? So we know the superficial meaning of the words. And so it's good to make dua, because the duas, those prayers, those words remind us of our Rabb. However, if we never learned to reflect on the ayat in the Quran together with the ayat in the creation, if we did not learn how to read and decipher the ayat in the creation, how to witness the ayat in the creation, then those prayers, those duas, won't be as effective. And sometimes we will think it's from the dua, it's from the prayers. I have prayers everywhere, and my life didn't change much. Especially for those who are more questioning, because there are people who just say, don't question anything, because if we question anything, it's going to be like a volcano. It will explode. There's no answer to a lots of questions, that lots of issues that are taken for granted. So the issue, the problem is not from the prayers, but from ourselves. The du'as, the prayers are all very helpful. They show us the way to reflect. They are not only reminding us of God, and so we don't forget, or reminding us of to do something, you know. They are also, most especially when they are taken from they are verses from the Quran, ayat from the passages from the Quran. They actually show us the way to reflect as well. But most of the time we're not following their guidance. We're just reading them, reciting them, repeating them. We are not reading them in the sense of iqra. We're just repeating them. And so they will start functioning as ayat when we interact with them as what they are. And we start, let's say they are like keys. We have to use the keys. We can't just take the keys around with us and we have all the keys. True, I have all the keys, but unless you use them, then those keys won't be of big help, except that maybe feeling some security, saying, I have the keys with me. If I know they are keys, because sometimes I may not even know that they are keys, and keys for what? So until our new way of perceiving the world, of perceiving things, of perceiving events as ayat, we need to start perceiving things as ayat, glorifying their maker. When it becomes our way of being and perceiving, then whenever we turn, we will see God's countenance, we will see Wajhullah, we will see the beautiful names of God. Then those ayat, in the beginning, they will remind us if we forget, and later they will, even if we don't forget, we will revel, we will take pleasure in repeating them, because it's something beautiful is happening. You want to say it again and again. You want to repeat it again and again. Remind yourself again and again how beautiful and how meaningful everything is. Even if we don't forget, repeating those prayers will be something, will be food for the soul. The soul will rejoice in repeating those prayers. And in the beginning of the journey, they will have not only, it will be joyful, but it will also be reminding us, because we may forget in the beginning. So in ayat 15, we are told the people who truly believe in our ayat are only those who, when they are reminded of them, they fall down prostrating and glorify their Rabb, their sustainer, with praise, and they are not arrogant. So there are 4 qualities of the believers. First, as soon as they are reminded of God's ayat, they fall in prostration. And the term used is kharru sujada, and it doesn't say sajadu. Sajadu would be they prostrated. No, there is a stronger image. It's not just they go and prostrate. No, they fall into prostration. And it gives this, it's very emotional. Like the hearts of the believers are involved and they are so vigilant. They, as soon as they're reminded of the ayat of God, especially in the Quran, but also in the creation, they fall in prostration and they submit to their Rabb with their minds, with their hearts, with their soul, and they express it physically. It means that they are already familiar with the ayat. Otherwise, you can't remind me of something I don't know. And if I'm not really acquainted with it, then it won't have such a huge effect on the person. It means not only that they're already familiar with the ayat and the guidance and the messages of the ayat, but also it also means that they realize the importance, the significance of these messages and the relevance of their life so much that they just submit and fall in prostration. In Surah Maryam, which also we studied together as well, Surah 19, in Ayah 58, we were told that the prophets and the elected people and those who have, and the people who we had guided and elected, whenever the ayat of the compassionate are conveyed onto them, they would fall down, prostrating themselves and weeping. إذا تتلى عليهم آيات الرحمن خروا سجدا وبكيا. So it's again the same expression, خروا سجدا, but here in Surah Al-Rahman, Surah Maryam, which the name of God Rahman was repeated many times because it was the theme of Rahmah, of mercy and compassion, was emphasized in that surah, in that chapter. We are told the guided people, when the ayat of the compassionate are conveyed onto them, they fall prostrating and weeping. So you can see also here that this falling in prostration is something that the whole heart and like body, mind, soul, heart, everything is submitting to God. There is humility, there is gratitude, there is total surrender, and there is happiness. It's very, very powerful expression. And next, the second and the third is that indication of the believers is, let's remember that the believers are only those who do this. Those who don't do this are not truly believers, it seems, from the way it is worded. إِنَّمَا يُؤْمِنُ. Who are the believers in our ayat? Those who, when they hear, they are reminded of the ayat, they fall prostrating. They fall prostrating means immediately. That's their immediate reaction, that immediate response rather than reaction. And then the next qualities is, or that indicate the true believer, is they glorify their Rabb with praise. So they glorify and praise their Rabb. And remember, وَسَبَّحُوا بِحَمْدِ رَبِّهِمْ. I talked about tasbih many, many times, not only when we came across it in many various passages in the Quran, but also as separate theme in the Quran, because it's so important, because we are told again and again, glorify God with praise. This is an amr, just like pray. So we told once do the prayers, but we told again and again glorify God. And even the prayers, the salat, is a form of glorifying God and praising Him. But we cannot there cannot be tasbih without the ayat. I mean, just to say Subhanallah, the words we repeat Subhanallah, that's not tasbih if we don't mean it. And if we mean it, it's going to be to the extent that we mean it, to the extent that we know what it means and mean it and perform it, to that extent we are making the tasbih truly. Because the words are supposed to be reminders. And again, the words, like the prayers, they are like keys. They are useful when they are used to open something. So if someone doesn't know things as ayat, his tasbih is going to remain very superficial. And the fourth ayah the fourth quality, in this ayah is humility. We are told, وَلَا يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ, they are not arrogant. It's actually a verb. It means it's a practice of humility. They practice humility. It's not just they are arrogant or they are not arrogant. They are humble. It's a verb. It's something that they practice. Practicing humility is being aware and practicing our ubudiyah. Our ubudiyah is the expression of humility. There cannot be ubudiyah if there is no humility. And of the practice of receiving the gifts of rububiyyah with gratitude, with humility, and affirming again and again that they do not view themselves as above glorifying and praising their Rabb. Whenever they remember him through his ayat, through his blessings, they fall down. They are not above falling down because that's all we can do. Because
Yamina,
there is no I without his he's creating, he's sustaining, we do not exist. So any imagining that there is a little me who should claim or deserves something to appropriate for themselves, that's the ego rearing its head, and that's total lies. Yes. Yes.
this third quality of practicing humility, I thought maybe we can also. I thought this is interesting. Humility, as you said last time, humility and not being arrogant is a precondition of being a believer.
Yes.
It makes a lot of sense. I just wanted to highlight that because in the act of surrendering, in the act of glorifying and offering praise, we are affirming that the only source of goodness and power is one, and it's beyond everything. And then how is it related to arrogance? Because in arrogance, we assume that we are the source, partly for some goodness. So in the tasbih, in the act of glorifying and praising, we are in effect saying it, I am not the source and I'm not going to do myself.
And it's only then that we can start seeing things as ayat. Because if I am independent myself, everything is independent, how can they be ayat? I may claim they are ayat, but I cannot interact with them as actual ayat. Yeah, this is very, very important, this humility part, because yes, it's the first step towards iman. Before there is iman, there must be some dose of humility.
And then, further going deeper in that humility, because the more we see the signs, inshallah, the more we recognize that they are pointing to something.
Then afterwards, it becomes consciously letting go of our claims and becoming more and more cultivating that humility. That's why the verb is used. I like that the verb is used.
And so this kind of knowing, as you have been emphasizing, has to go through the self, because there's something that we have to let go about ourselves. Seeing ourselves as the source of some things, source of some goodness, some power. And that's
exactly
the hardest.
That's why the verb is not actually in the positive. It's la yastakbirun. They do not, they are not arrogant, or they do not practice arrogance, because actually arrogance is not something that we come up with, we are born with. It's something that we cultivate through choices. And so we need to let go, as you said. It's a process of the process of humility is a process of realizing the facts, the reality, and letting go of our delusions.
Yes, inshallah.
Yeah.
Are there any comments or questions at this time?
I really think like this point is a point that we should like maybe ask examples about, like what could we see as things that like, you know, that lead to this arrogance, that things that you need to let go of. Like, I know, I think it's a clear, like it's very important. I have a, yeah, I have, say it again.
It is very important, true.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't take a step on the path of Iman without some humility. Arrogance means away from Iman, humility means towards Iman. That's why before there is even in Imam Badi'uzzaman Said Nursi rahimahullah, when he starts some like parable story kind of thing, he always starts with, there were two people. One was humble, one was arrogant. Before they are going to cultivate Iman, you see why one of them believes and the other one doesn't want to believe. Not because the evidence are different or are missing, or no, because something is blocking the way, and that's our arrogance.
And in addition to being a precondition, it's also for the continuing of the journey, because
it needs to be that clearing up the arrogance is that's part of the purification of the tazkiyah.
Yeah, and so that, you know, it's really well symbolized in the act of prostration, you know, putting your head down on the floor.
Exactly.
Not that I'm nothing. I'm
exactly
dependent on you, and I'm nothing. And I mean, those of us who were raised in it and grow up practicing making sajda, it may or may not be. I don't want to generalize, but it's worth reflecting, because I had a friend many years ago. She's coming from a non-practicing family, and then she discovered religion later on, and so she was like, okay, this is wonderful, like it's all clicking and so on. But then when it came to the prayer, and she said the sajda was the hardest thing in my life. I was like, I'm okay, you know, standing up, reciting things, but like putting my head down, like before another being. And I had never like heard that kind of, you know, self-conscious, self-aware response to sajda, but it made me think, and now it attracts attention that one of the first things, actually the first thing that this verse 15 mentions, is whenever our signs are conveyed, they prostrate, they fall down in prostration. So to recognize that the act of prostration is not just a physical act. In that physical act, there is an expression of this fundamental reality that I am nothing without you. I'm completely dependent on you.
Exactly.
And if we take it seriously, it may be very hard to a part in us that doesn't want it, but inshallah with tazkiyah, of course, it becomes
And the physical practicing of the prostration will help tremendously as well. The more we actually prostrate, it will soften the heart as well.
So Yamina, like people like who are used to praying, like prostration and sajda, even praying during sajda, might not be as training, or like, as like this young lady who like discovered Quran Islam later, because she's realizing what it is. So because sometimes you're in sajda, you're doing this, but it takes a lot of like I don't know, like, there's, I think everyone has an example. An example that comes to my mind was when my nephew broke his back, and I was in Egypt, and I was like, I know a lot of doctors, and I was determined to find the best doctor. And I'd go and like determined, today I'm going to find these doctors. I go and meet people, and they say they're coming and they're the best doctors, and then they don't come. I do this the second day, the third day, and I'm determined like to do this, and I'm making sujood and praying every day. But it was like by the third day or fourth day, when no one was showing up, that I broke down and said, you know what, it's not me. I will not bring those doctors. Like, only that moment of like, breaking down into sajda was a different moment. Like, whereas like when I realized I cannot do this on my own, like every time I think I'm there, I'm getting them, and only then doors started opening. So I was doing a lot of sujood in between, but it wasn't the same sujood. It's like this sujood was like when I realized I cannot do this. It's not
Before it was like
to do it. Yeah.
It was partial, partial prostration, partially help
Yeah.
me. I'm doing it. You help me. Make it easier for me.
Yeah.
Not realizing that I'm totally dependent on.
Totally depending. Yes.
That's why
there's a moment when you realize that. Yes.
Normally in the prayers, make the sajda a little bit longer. Stay in sajda a little bit longer, so that you start tasting it. Stay there longer, especially when we want to stand up. Then you stay here. When you want to stand up, you stay here longer. It works. It does work. It does cultivate that humility more and more, because otherwise, unless we do it consciously, it's very easy to forget everything. It's like it's easy to fail the class than to study. But if let's say this ubudiyah is like everyone's what they were created for. It means it's your, how do you say, when people find their calling, it's your calling. So once you start sitting and studying, and you start really, really enjoying it, it just takes the beginning to get used to it.
A quick question.
Yes.
In terms of sajda, I mean, I think there's so many different aspects of it, right? I mean, you've got the physical aspect
Yes.
where you're putting your forehead to the ground, but then also, I mean, there are benefits from doing that, right? There's this grounding aspect where we spend a lot of our time in our heads, which kind of gets us ungrounded. By doing that action, we're actually grounding ourselves, especially if you do it on a natural surface.
I didn't get the part of the natural surface. Can you explain that again, Meher? Like you came like, okay, what did I miss about that? The last part.
So, I mean, and I think Dr. Yamina probably can explain more, but the metaphysical, because when we become so ungrounded, when we spend a lot of time in our heads, and so if you happen to be like in a park or somewhere where you're actually on the ground, as opposed to, you know, the artificial environment that we live in. So what happens is you're actually, when your forehead comes in contact with the natural surface, you're there, things that are being released, and there are things from the earth itself that you're gaining. So it actually grounds you more.
Okay, I think I
Let's say
get it.
that's a good side effect, but like
Yeah.
that's not the reason we do it.
No, it's not. But I mean, I think you
Help, yeah. Mhm.
you know, you do have some benefit, and if you can find the ground to do it, then you do end up with grounding yourself a little bit more.
Inshallah.
And this is the benefit that like believers and non-believers all get. Like everyone will get this benefit, like this
Yes.
benefit of, like, you know, the same way we feel very comfortable when we're like, you know, when you said, like, you know, when there's sajda in, like, you know, in a beautiful park, or when your feet are in the water or your feet are in the sand, like all of that grounding is something that all of us sort of need and get. And we add, I mean, like what the Quran does is like it gives it that, like that soul sajda, like the heart sajda, which is the real sajda. Like that sajda, why we do it is what you said. And like it amazed me to understand, like, you know, when you see people doing yoga and like they get this, they get the benefit, but like there's like several other levels that of sajda, which
Layers,
is when
yeah.
the soul, which is the prayer soul sajda. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yep.
There
But
is, thank you, everyone. There is a comment here on the chat box. It says from Brother Faraz, does it help to understand arrogance as a making something bigger, greater than it is? Is that a more little sense of kibr? And then another comment from Mahar saying, can we explore arrogance a little bit more?
Yeah, actually the word in Arabic is yastakbirun, which literally means making something bigger than it is. وَلَا يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ وَهُمْ لَا يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ. It means they do not make themselves bigger than they are, because anyone who is not a truly believer, anyone who is not following all these steps, anyone who does not fall down in prostration and glorify their sustainer with praise when they are reminded of God's ayat, it's because they are making themselves bigger than they are. That's what arrogance is here.
I feel I made myself bigger than what I am when I was seeking help for my nephew, because I'm a doctor and I'm asking my colleagues who are now heads of departments for a favor that I believe they will do for me because of our relationship. So I gave myself, like, I really like looking at the word making yourself bigger. Like I wouldn't have felt the same way if I was asking like help from an engineer, because I don't know anyone in engineering. I wouldn't believe that they would know my value. But I went in there thinking everyone knows me. This is my, you know, my own university. These are my colleagues. That, you know, I'm making myself bigger. I'm so important that, like, you know, I went and called them. I went to their office. They promised me to come, which I expected of them, and they should come. And they actually all wanted to come, but every one of them, after promising, something would come up unexpectedly and they will call to apologize, as if God is saying, hey, like, it's not you. That if they would have come, I would have definitely thought it's because of me. Like I would have definitely thought it's my relationship. It's like I made myself bigger, really.
That's just like
I'm
and
entitled.
in Arabic, any time there is istaf'ala is to make something what it is not. So here is takbara is to, because we are not what we think we are when we are in a state of mindlessness. We think we are doing things, we think we see, we think we, even the thinking and everything. And actually, if you stop, pause, and just observe without all that taken for granted, those pre-understanding, pre-judgment, and just stop and look at things from zero, as if we were like just newly born, you realize that I have absolutely no say over anything. And all what I do is so limited, and it is a tiny part of so many other factors that it feels like I chose this and it happened, but many times I chose the same thing and it doesn't happen because I am not in control. And forget about the outer world, the inner world. I wouldn't even be here alive speaking if I were not given a life. But that, the most important thing, we take it totally for granted. So actually, our what we call normal perception of ourselves and the world is totally distorted. It is totally based on delusions. And that's why it is, but these people, they do not make themselves bigger. They are not arrogant. It means they are more and more aware of who they truly are. Therefore, therefore, what the creation is about, that everything is an ayah, and an ayah to what? To their Rabb. Can you imagine? When we forget about our Rabb, we forget about God, we forget about the hereafter, we're investing all our efforts, all our life, everything for some transient, impermanent goals and purposes. And when you learn this way, when you learn the reality that all those things are not only they are impermanent and they don't last, they're transient, but also that how I am perceiving them, how I'm perceiving myself is totally, has nothing to do with the fact. And then you start realizing that everything is an ayah. Anytime we are reminded of an ayah, we are again reminded of the reality that I owe my everything. My everything means not my house or things. No, even my identity, the I am using, even that is borrowed. My breathing, my seeing, my everything to my Rabb. So of course they will remind me of him. What do the ayat do? They speak of God, they glorify him, they say there is no giver of life except him, there is no helper except him, there is no sustainer except him. That's what they are doing. When I see the ayat, it means I start glorifying with them and praising God with them. And while I am doing this, the result will be لا يستكبرون. So actually the order in which these qualities are set, they are actually building on one onto the other. And so I start realizing who I am more and more. And when we are in disconnection with who we are, with our Rabb, it seems like it doesn't sound good to be in this position, because we are still in that bubble of delusion. But in reality, this is the ultimate joy, the ultimate fulfillment, the ultimate that fulfillment, that joy, that happiness that we are seeking is in this formula, is in this way of being. That's why they are so grateful. And that's why afterwards they are so fearful of forgetting this. Can you imagine forgetting this? For what? The alternative is zero. The alternative is working for something that is ephemeral, something that doesn't exist in itself, since it is only an ayah from our Rabb. So that's why the fear of losing this status become much bigger. That's why in the next ayah, in ayah 16, it says whose sides, it means their bodies, they are restless in their beds. Why? They want to rise, they can't sleep, because to call on their sustainer in fear and hope. Because what is at stake is something so precious, something so important, something that everyone is working so hard to get, and you find it and you don't want to lose it. So there is fear of again falling into heedlessness, forgetting, making ourselves big again, if we want to use that word. And that's why it falls well with the next ayah as well.
Yamina, I wanted to highlight something here in terms of making something bigger than it is. We are signs ourselves, pointing to our source. So that is what we are. What does it mean to pretend to be bigger than that? Is to pretend that we are source, partially or so, but we are the source. So that's why in examples that we give, the distinction is subtle, because for instance, in the case of Ali's example, Aliyah felt it deep down in her heart. So she can say what the problem was, but from outside, these are things that are hard to judge, because the similar things can be done as in the name of the source or in the name of delusion, right? So there are situations in which you find yourself that when you knock the door, it will be opened, or when you have the entry card, you have to slide it for other people to come in with you. So this isn't about saying, no, I don't have the membership card. Let's say you're going somewhere, I don't have the membership. Yes, you do have a membership card. Yes, these people don't have it, and you have the authority to let them in. Let's say you have the authority to let them in, but in the act of letting them in, and that's why it's so subtle, because I can do it with kibr, in the sense that I am letting them in because I am special, I'm part of this institution, so on and so forth, or I am letting them in the name of the source who gave me this, put me in this position, in this particular position. And it's, it is a subtle thing, but it's very, very important, because makes, as you're saying, it makes a difference between day and night, between, shirk.
And it connects very nicely with the next ayah, when we are told them that these believers, and they are not arrogant, they do not make themselves bigger than they are. And then we are told, it's an expression in Arabic, who sighs restlessly, they're restless in their bed. It means they cannot sleep, they're restless, they wake up from their bed to call on to their sustainer in fear and hope, and who spend from what we provide for them. وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ comes very nicely with what you just said, Isra. They don't give of their own wealth. They know that it is مِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ, what is given to them, and who spend from what we provide for them, from what God provides for them. So they cannot sleep, and they forsake sleep in order to pray and call onto their Rabb in fear and hope. So fear, because they cannot be sure of their sincerity. There is always the possibility of falling into arrogance, into that hypocrisy of istikbar, of making ourselves bigger than we are. That's hypocrisy. And the moment we think, I'm doing well, I'm a good believer, everything is fine, then that claim itself is from the ego. It starts claiming its share, says, but I'm doing also something. So they are aware enough to know that they cannot rely on their good deeds, for instance. That's why there is that fear of always Because, for instance, good deeds are the tip of the iceberg. We talked about it in ayah 12. Remember, in ayah 12, when the disbelievers, they went to, on the day of judgment, they said, let us go back, we will do to the world. When we return, we'll do good deeds. But they missed the main point, which is Iman. Iman is that connection with God, with who we are, is that humility, the gist of Iman is that humility, that surrender, that prostration before our Rabb. And they didn't even ask for forgiveness, if you remember. It means they still were deluded into thinking that they were the doers. They were going to perform the good deeds. Again, they were in a state of, they were not in a state of humility. They were in a state of lying to themselves, of making themselves bigger than they were. Again, the hypocrisy was not there. So they didn't get the message, because the good deeds is only the tip of the iceberg. And the rest of the iceberg is inner doing. And that's what inside is what makes the deeds, our deeds, wholesome or not, or rotten. And we talked about the connection between good deeds and Iman. Then in Surah An-Nisa, in Surah 4, ayah 145, 46, we are told the hypocrites. So who are the hypocrites? Hypocrisy is what? To pretend to be who we are not. So hypocrisy is based on istikbar. Definitely there is no humility there. The hypocrites, we are told, will be in the lowest depth of hell, and you will find no one to help them except those who repent, mend their ways, hold fast to God, and devote their deen مخلصين له وأخلصوا دينهم لله. It means they make God their only, they worship God alone, nothing else. Everything else is a sign, including ourselves. We are signs. We are not source. Nothing is source. There is only one source. These will be joined with the believers, and God will give the believers a mighty rewards. And for the deeds, we are told in Surah Al-Furqan, Surah 25, Ayah 23, we are told, we shall have turned وقدمنا إلى ما عملوا من عمل فجعلناه هباء. Let's say we will turn towards all the supposedly good deeds, all the deeds of they ever have done, the deeds of the who are they? In the previous ayah, we are told the mujrimeen, so the disbelievers, and again called criminals, like in this ayah. Their deeds, God is saying, we will turn towards their good deeds, because it seems like good deeds that they ever done, and we shall have them transformed into scattered dust. Why? Because they did it as though they were the source. So because they are not the source, that's it. That deed does not have any fruits, any result. It doesn't have any. How else would we express this? It's abtar. So this is very important, that if we focus on the deeds, and there are lots of Qudsi hadiths, meaning sacred hadiths, where we are told how people did this for God, helped people, learned the Quran by heart and this and that, but they still, at the end, it did not work. And we are told, they are asked, why did you do it? You didn't do it for haqq, for the truth. You did it for yourself, for people to say, oh, he's so good at reciting the Quran, he's such a generous person, helping everyone. And for instance, it means you did not recognize yourself as an ayah, as it is done unto you, as only a channel to the names of God, but as a mini source. And when I perceive myself as a mini source, I start perceiving everyone and everything as mini sources, and that's what shirk means. And then I can't see the face of God, because people themselves think themselves, those attributes, those qualities I see, they seem to belong to them. And so I cannot relate what I'm observing to the source. And that's why my belief in God remains something like not denying, or at least not knowing God as my Rabb here and now, and not knowing him with his beautiful names, not being able to confirm, to experience, to witness that reality. And you see how humility is very closely tied to that iman and knowing God as Rabb. Because humility is knowing myself as totally dependent on my Rabb. That's what abd is. And it is when I know myself as abd, that's called ubudiyah, it's a state of being, that my the so-called rituals become acts of worship. When I am in ubudiyah, when I know myself as abd, not only the rituals are worship, everything I do and say and perceive and hear and will become potential ibadah and worship, inshallah. And so then you see why there is this, when you know this, it makes sense that these people have this fear and hope, because there is something very big at stake. There is this fear of falling into hypocrisy, falling into arrogance, into lying. That's what we call the ego, claiming things that are not the reality. And at the same time, there is also hope in their Rabb's infinite compassion and mercy. And this fear increases their humility, actually, and it brings them even closer to their Rabb and to his mercy, because now they feel the need for God's help, for God's compassion, and so they appreciate it even more and more. And this also increases their longing for the meeting with their Rabb. Unlike the disbelievers, you remember the disbelievers in Ayah 10, they were disbelievers. We were told they are disbelievers in the meeting with their sustainer, with their hum bi liqa'i rabbihim kafirun. So the balance of this fear and hope keeps their awareness alive, and it leads to more constant and more meaningful, more deeper ibadah, more mindful ibadah, or let's say ubudiyah and therefore ibadah. And because if fear becomes overcomes hope, then the believer may fall into hopelessness. And that's a weakness, because it means he doesn't know his Rabb with his beautiful names enough to trust him at the same time, if it's fear overwhelms him. Too much hope also may lead towards negligence, and we start being lazy and saying, oh, God is innahu ala kulli shay'in, he's Ghafoor, he's Rahim, God is all merciful, it's okay. But it's not God that needs it, it's me that needs it. So in that claim, there is a negligence, not only in practice, in action, but also in humility. It means I'm again thinking that as if I was doing God a favor by praying or something. Hasha. He doesn't need it, it's me who needs it. So the last quality of the believer here in this ayah, after fear and hope, is infaq, and we leave it to the next week, inshallah. But it is the result and the embodiment of Iman, that they spent out of what we give them. It means they are aware of whatever they spent, and what they spent is not specified, means not only wealth, but anything that is given to them, knowledge, experience, prayers, anything. Whatever is given to them is not theirs. It is God who is providing them. So this is really very important, and it touches the point where Isra was saying, like, when we don't know that we are a sign ourselves, a unit of measurement of ourselves, then we think we are doing, we are helping. But here they know that they are not. They are giving not from their wealth, but from what God gave them. What does it mean? We say, oh, of course, my wealth is what God gave me. No. Here, there is an emphasis that they know that when I'm giving something, I am not giving it as mine. It means the feeling has changed. This is very important. It's not about what I know, it's how I experience it, how it feels to me when I'm giving. If it's mine, you will see how I will be giving. My hand will, I will think about it 10 times before I give it. But if it's from him, it's very easy to give.
Dr. Yamina, there is a question.
Yes.
Again, from Sister Anna and Amina, I think, or maybe someone else. Okay, Anna. It says, Dr. Yamina, do you have suggestions on how to cope with living in heedlessness?
How to cope?
Yeah, would you like to say it, or would you like me to read it out, Sister Anne? No. You are muted, by the way.
I can read it. I was just asking that, of course, we're all striving to improve ourselves and live in a more mindful state of God, where we're always mindful of God and we never forget him. But as we strive towards that, we fail a lot, and it's very painful. And my question was, as we're striving towards that mindfulness, we're only able to move at the rate that God allows. As hard as we may try, we move at the rate that God allows, and inshallah, we will continue to make good progress. But in the meantime, it's painful to know that you're living with the ghafla, living in ghafla, and with that heedlessness so often in your life. And I just wondered if you had suggestions on how to cope with the painfulness of that in the meantime.
And Dr. Yamina,
remember, let me, remember what I shared an ayah was saying, the true heedless are those who are satisfied with the worldly transient life. Now, if there is pain, that's definitely not being satisfied. So actually, that's how we are. That's our first step towards waking up from ghafla. So I would say start by making peace with it, embracing that pain as a messenger from God as a friend, a teacher. Because if I say, oh, pain, it feels bad, it doesn't feel good, and I am resisting it and like not welcoming it, then I am not getting the message from the pain. But if I am feeling pain, it means I'm already, my heart is open, is seeking, is longing for something more meaningful, something more lasting. And the pain is the sign to that. So if you stop, stop in the sense of pause and welcome the pain as a messenger from God, as a friend on the path towards God, and listen to it, it will teach you many, many beautiful things. This is the first step, but Isra wanted to say something. Isra, were you going to say something?
I was just about to read two more comments that was in the chat.
Sorry. Okay, go ahead, please.
Question, but to sort of answer them. So, okay. Sheikh was saying that although Dr. Yamina has asked and she shall respond, but I can't help but think, could it be that the meaning of ghafla is to be celebrated as the outcome of an inner affirmation of God consciousness, which you already sort of mentioned.
Good. Yeah.
And Zahra said, I have a question that might be related to Anna's. Are source of our ghafla? And is it arrogance when I feel disappointed in myself when I fall into ghafla? And then she added saying, after you spoke, she said, right, ghafla has two faces, one that looks to us, the other to the one who sends it. Oh, this is from Faraz to Zahra.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there is some disappointment from my, it's like the fear and the hope. Fear as far as I am concerned, but hope as far as my Rabb is concerned. And here also, if I'm disappointed in myself, but I should not be, how do you say, totally paralyzed by being disappointed and not actually what is behind the disappointment. I'm asking you to actually, Zahra, I should have done this and this, right?
Hello?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
We're disappointed because you feel like I should have done this and this.
I should have controlled my anger. I shouldn't have said this. I shouldn't have let my emotion take over.
Okay, so if this is how I am going to do it, I'm not going to be able to, how do you say? Progress on the path. Because actually I am unhappy with what happened, right? I dislike what happened. But instead of listening to the dislike, the unhappiness with what happened and learn from it, then I will learn some wisdom. I'm already as if I already, how do you say, condemning it. I'm saying I should not have done it. And when I am, even if it is true from one aspect, when I am focused on I should not be doing this, I am not learning the wisdom in what happened. In what happened, not only as an event, but also how I reacted or responded to it and my feeling towards the whole thing. So I am not learning to read the signs, the ayat. I am busy being impatient. This shouldn't have happened. As if somehow, suddenly, I will be reading the signs, and everything will be going smoothly as I want. There is no such a thing. It is through the contrast of like and dislike that I am guided in this life, and that I start making sense of the signs. When you start listening to the signs and learning the wisdom, even if it is something you dislike, you will be grateful from the wisdom you learn from it, from the message you learn from it. It will always be a message that will take you closer to who you are, closer to the names of God, closer to God, and therefore to a state where you can, to a certain degree, witness that whatever is created now has meaning, is created on purpose, and it looks to the eternal, beautiful names of God. It looks to Akhirah. So it's going to be something that increases your awareness, increases your Iman, and therefore takes you to a place of praising God. Now, when you come to this state, you maybe, as you said, I shouldn't have been angry. Now it becomes astaghfirullah. It becomes a means of repenting. You see what I mean?
Mhm.
But the event, once it's done, and the emotions that follow all have meaning, and I need to stop and, okay, I shouldn't have done this. It means somehow, somewhere in you recognizes that this is not the wisest thing. It means you are already familiar with what is wise, right? So if you listen in that moment, if you listen, you will be taught what is the wisest way, what wisdom requires, what is the meaning of what's going on. Of course, with training, it will be even easier, but at least in the beginning, if we know that this is meaningful, so it's not something to beat ourselves over, but to learn from. And the more we learn from, the less likely we are going to repeat the same thing exactly without ever changing. But the more we say, I shouldn't be doing it, I can find myself after a year doing the same thing and saying the same thing. So if you see what I mean. And it's the same with the pain. The more we listen to that pain, the more that pain will speak to us. It will be our teacher. It will be our khidr. And so it doesn't mean that, okay, I'll become now familiar with pain and I can just stay in heedlessness forever. When you are listening to pain, you are not in heedlessness anymore. You are now more mindful. You are making an intention to listen to something and find a meaning related to whoever is sending it with a message. What are you telling me through this pain? You do not create anything without any meaning. I mean, any more specific things will need more specific, how do you say, examples. Some of you maybe are familiar. We do this in some of our retreats. Take the person step by step through this to find the message there. And usually it's going to be a breakthrough, and you realize that there's no need to fear listening to pain, because it seems like, oh, does it mean that I will be stuck in pain forever? No, it means that you won't need pain anymore, because pain will fulfill its purpose, at least at that level. and you will go to a higher level, inshallah. You will find yourself elevated to a higher level of listening, a higher level of being aware and mindful, and that listening, that reading of the signs, that remembering of the signs will be made more and more familiar, more and more easier, and the pain won't be as deep anymore, because it won't have, there won't be need for the pain to pull us up or out of our heedlessness. Because the more we are aware, the less we need the pain to wake us up. Is there someone is saying something?
If anybody wants to,
there was like a flash, so I thought someone wanted to.
Yeah, if you want to chime in directly with your voice, that would be helpful, easier than the chat.
I remember, Yamina, you were telling me with relations to not focus on the negative part of the relation, even with mentioning it. Like the more I mention the negative part that's not working in a relationship, the more that negative part becomes all what I focus on. And instead of like my default with negative parts of relationships with people that are close to me is that I preach. So I would like, I'll keep preaching that, for example, a gratitude. Like if someone is close to me and they're complaining about different things, I will have a tendency, oh, you're not making hamd, like, this is not hamd, you should be making hamd. And the more I say that, of course, the more I aggravate them, and the more it doesn't work out. And I've been trying, although it's not very successful all the times, but trying to see, okay, when they are complaining, why does that make me feel pain? And maybe it makes me feel pain because I also complain a lot, like, so they just make it clear to me
very good.
How much I complain all the time. And maybe I'm not complaining as clear as they do, but I'm complaining inside, maybe, in different
more subtle ways, we can
more subtle ways. Yeah, but because they complain so outwardly, so I'm still, I'm not over this, but I'm still trying to turn those moments into, Ya Allah, like, help me stop complaining, help me, heal me from that complaint, make me realize everything has a meaning, because they are the magnified, they're the magnified me. Like it irritates me because they're mirroring me in a magnified way. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Jazakallah khair.
Yeah, that's one example of what's going on out there is mirroring, reflecting what's inside me. So I start, instead of saying you should be grateful, I would be, I am grateful. I am grateful for this. That event itself became something that reminded me of something inside me. So as I practice gratitude for the people around me. It means when they are complaining, it's annoying, but actually it's reminding me something about me. I start praying for them instead, and being grateful for their being there, instead of saying you should be grateful, why aren't you grateful? And meanwhile, as if implicitly saying, why are these people in my life? Why are people complaining in my life? As if this is happening randomly, haphazardly, without meaning. But when I catch myself, and then I realize that the whole setting is from one aspect, the aspect looking to me, because there are many aspects looking to those people, looking to akhirah that I have no idea of. That also remembering this is also humility. It doesn't mean whatever is happening is only looks to me, but there is an aspect that looks to me that is deeply meaningful, deeply full of compassion and wisdom, and that gives me more humility, makes me more grateful, and so that pain starts transforming into something more meaningful, more beautiful. But pain in the beginning is something that is needed, because can you imagine if we were in heedlessness and no pain? We would all in akhirah be appalled. How come you left me in heedlessness and you didn't, I didn't even know, I was not even aware that it was so hurting, so painful. So just think about it from that perspective and you'll see that pain is something, oh, alhamdulillah, that there is pain. Otherwise, I would just lose myself in heedlessness and not be even aware of it. So that's good. It means it's guidance. It is an ayah. An ayah means it's bearing messages from my Rabb. He's the host, I am the guest. He's taking care of me. Sometimes I need pain. And the more we understand the meaning of pain, the more we won't need as much pain to wake up. And actually, was it? Yeah, in one of the ayahs of this surah, which one was it? I don't remember. It was saying that we will send them some pain. So before the great pain of the hereafter, because so that they may turn back to us, to the straight path. It was in this surah, but which ayah? It was after 16, after 17, actually.
I think we didn't get to it yet.
21. I just read it in the beginning. That's why I remember. It's 21. So even that pain and torment that we are given is in order, she says, so that perhaps they might return. Again, it is so that we may return. Allah doesn't leave anyone alone, subhanAllah. Until we leave this world, He is always after us with blessings, with pain, with everything. And all of them are to show us the straight path, the path of blessings, the path to eternal happiness, eternal fulfillment, inshallah. Thank you for the questions, very meaningful questions.
Thank you, Jazakumullah khair. Is there anyone who wants to make a final comment?
Actually, I want to relate this to being a physician. You know, whenever you have some internal problem, then there's a symptom outside. So same way, like what Sister Yamina was saying, if we didn't have those symptoms, how will we know there's an underlying disease? Or, you know, so that's a blessing from Allah just to have those symptoms. Otherwise, there'll be something growing inside and we won't know, you know, unless there is something which is evident enough to tell us that there is some problem and we need to take care of it. So I think we can relate it to that same thing. That Allah shows us through his small signs and the bigger signs.
We're not hearing. I'm not hearing. Siba.
I'm saying, like you said, similarly, like in medicine also, you see, there's an underlying disease. If you don't see the symptoms, the disease might progress without it being noticed. So same way, Allah sends us those messengers and so that we can return back to him. That was, and take care of and treat the underlying element. Did you get it, Sister Yamina?
Sister Yamina, are you there? You're muted. Are you hearing us? Maybe she's not hearing us.
I'm hearing right now. Before I was not hearing anything.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Ziba was making a connection between.
I heard her in the beginning, yes.
Okay. And there was this one last comment in the chat box from Faraz saying that if ease and mindfulness becomes my goal in addition to the one here one is capitalized, would bring them to ruin. I am never left alone. And then complaining's solution is not in ceasing to complain, but finding the truth/meaning of it.
Let's put it this way. When I'm trying to cease to complain, I am again focused on the action and not what's causing it. I'm focused on the symptoms and not what's causing. So that's why it's not a solution. I have not changed my way of being. And I'm saying to myself, I shouldn't complain, I shouldn't complain, I shouldn't complain. But I cannot not complain because I'm in a complaining mode. Even when I'm saying I should not complain, I am doing it in a complaining kind of way, if I may say. So it's always, that's why God will change us, but when we change what is inside us, there is something in me that is not seeing the things to be, or not focusing the things that to be grateful, to celebrate, to. And that's why I'm focused on the things that are lacking and complaining about them. Until I change that inner perception, I cannot change my actions. I can change it like once, twice, and then it will come again in other ways. Because we cannot control that. We can only, that's why I always say, instead of focusing on the doing, we need to focus on the being. Why? Because the doing is the result of the being. So I can choose who to be, but what to do, it's not always under my control. And if I am being in a certain way, sometimes that certain way, it is the prerequisite, it requires doing things in a particular way. So it's like putting the cart before the horse when we start with doing. Like when we are asking, we have a problem, say, what shall we do? What shall I do? First, what shall I be? Who do I want to be? And then when I am in that state of humility, in that state of gratitude, in that state of connected to who I am and to my Rabb, then we are inspired with what to do. I will be open to that inspiration. I will take, and when it will come, I will take inspired action because I will be open to it. And otherwise, even if I take inspired action, I will take it as if it's my doing. And so it won't be, there will be no blessing, no barakah in it. So it makes sense when Farah says the complaining solution is not in ceasing to complain, but find the truth, the meaning of it, behind it. Something is going on that is causing this. That's only a symptom.
Right. So maybe I will comply with.
Yes, if you
because,
do, you better, inshallah, please.
So I also feel, I mean, it's very late. I'm so sorry. Maybe we should discuss it next time. But there is just to point out something, maybe to think about. I don't have a final thought on it, but I think there is a culture of sufficiency. Weakness is looked down upon. If somebody cries out and says, oh, that I wish that this were the case. Oh, that I wish this didn't happen. This is in a larger sort of discourse of self-sufficiency. This is seen as an ailment, a weakness of faith, a weakness, just like, in a culture of sufficiency, when you complain, it means you are drawing attention to something lacking. You should just know, and that spoils the fun for everyone. So no, just get on with it. Don't complain. Don't think about what's missing. Just look at the bright side of life, kind of thing. And this culture of sufficiency is, I think, affects people who and then believe in that way, where suddenly believing in God should not produce any sort of outward, there shouldn't be any outward sign of insufficiency, in the same way that I think, people who are really sufficient and happy, and happiness becomes a goal in itself, and sufficiency. And so I think the Quran's, or the Revelation's message is different. It's a different goal that it presents. It doesn't ask me to, let's just say briefly that complaining too is a sign of something. For the Quran's perspective, if you are hurt and you feel lacking and in need of something, you can either try to take care of that need, so it's a problem that you fix, and so that, outwardly, or is it something that is that is a sign, and therefore to its meaning that I cannot understand without Revelation's guidance. And so I turn to Revelation and say, okay, Revelation says, come to me every time you are like this, and I will tell you this is a sign. And then if you follow my guidance, then you will see it, and it will not be a problem to you. And so I may not even seek this kind of sufficiency of, never shall I encounter a situation in life where I would say, oh, I wish it wouldn't happen. But rather,
So you are not using complain as whining, because most of the time we use it as whining and not making peace with what's going on. It's as if it shouldn't have happened, but you are using it as true complaining, in the sense of being dissatisfied with what happened, with something that's happening.
Right.
Yeah. And yes, if I think there is a fear also. It's not only self-sufficiency, maybe, although that's also part of the culture of istikbar, let's say. But also there is a fear that if I make peace with what I am dissatisfied with, I may be stuck in it forever. I had people tell me, like, No, I am not going to make peace with it and see it as a sign of something, because it felt like, does it mean that I'm going to be stuck here forever? But like, everything is changing all the time. Once you realize the meaning of this, surely things always change. Who said that you will be there forever?
Right, right. And in fact, I feel once you actually find the meaning in it, then your actions to remedy, to the extent that you can, become also meaningful. So
If
once,
there is something to remedy, because sometimes
right,
maybe it was me who was dissatisfied with what's going on, or
right,
it's
right,
truly a dissatisfying. For instance, if I am not healthy, of course we are created with being dissatisfied with illness. Yes, you were going to say something, Faraz.
oh, no, I was just muted myself so I could listen to what you were going to say.
Myself, because that was I didn't want to say more. What you had to say.
I know, yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right. So I guess just in short, I totally understand and feel myself this, every day sort of hitting rock bottom in some way or another, finding myself again as if one had nothing, and or going through the ups and downs, and I always kind of try to remind myself that when I come to the Quran or Revelation, it religion as a whole has, all those cultures and all those sayings of famous people and stories of who was so generous and who never got angry and etc. So that's that. But when you come to the Quran's teaching is uh, really interesting in the sense, I never read in the Quran telling me, don't get angry, don't get disappointed, don't feel,
Because then the goal would be to be perfect. It would be just the opposite of humility.
right,
That's
right,
not the goal of ibadah, is not to be perfect.
right,
Yeah, I see where I think we talked about it either during the retreat or something, like there is a tendency of seeing, for instance, they say, oh, he's an awliya Allah, or he's the prophet. Um, so if he's the prophet, he is perfect. That's why he's the prophet. He's perfect, and therefore it doesn't as if doesn't apply to me. The message doesn't apply to me. No, the that's what it means. And whenever we read in many passages in the Quran, you see how the prophets were in front of the same predicament as we all are, because they're human beings, they are not angels or something. But the choice they make is what makes them different. Not that they don't go through the same feelings or the same disappointments or the same dissatisfaction or
right. And I guess I want to
same
just,
sadness.
right, coming back to Istak, but I always feel, so I always want to understand something that I can confirm in a way. So therefore, when I think of sin and something bad, I try my best to not to dissociate with the connotations these things have in the culture. So for example, being arrogant, why is being arrogant bad? Well, everyone, if you try to say that I'm better than you or and so I say, no, that's not what the Quran is talking about. That is what culture says, pride, and maybe being proud sometimes is confidence. And so I can't tell the difference. What I read,
I could look very humble and modest, but
yeah,
in Quranic term, I'm arrogant.
right. So when I see that this, this, making big, so when I expect myself that I shall be such that I will never, for example, be ungrateful. And if so, so when I take on that on myself, then I see in myself that when I make that my goal and my claim, what I actually suffer from it. And so it's like I take on something. So when I understand, kibr, or the tortures of it, or the is really not because, God is kind of just someone who doesn't like pride, as if, there's a God up there who, but it, I need to witness it in myself that it is the case when I take on myself, for example, I shall live and I shall always be youthful and healthy. Now, when I take on that myself as a claim, then I will suffer from it because, alas, I will fall sick and I will get old and weak, and things will happen as I don't want them to happen. And so, kibr in that way, sort of, mounting certain expectations or burdens on something that cannot carry it. And that's what makes it unjust. And that is also kibr in a way, so I want to be able to look at myself and really say, yes, kibr, I witness kibr is bad for me. It is dhulm, and in every way, and I confirm it. And not because, religion says be humble and don't have kibr, but so to witness that um, kibr, and because of that, the tortures that kibr bring, it doesn't go with gratitude, because I can't be grateful as long as I stop doing that kind of putting something on some, like an expectation that it cannot bear. um, and, and so just yeah, I was just thinking of that. Sorry, I took so much time.
No, thank you for sharing. Thank you. Yeah, because this arrogance is like last time also. Each time I don't even want to use the word because it's so loaded with meanings that does not always fit the meaning in the Quran. Because we think arrogant means self-conceited, or like someone who is proud going around like this. But I may be a very modest person. Yeah, but that's, yes, maybe outwardly it may, if I am conceited, it's clear sign. But if I'm modest, it doesn't mean that I don't have the symptoms. They may be just there, not showing up so outwardly. But it goes back to internalizing the message of the Quran, experiencing it in our inner life. Otherwise, it doesn't make much sense. Otherwise, everything we'll read it very superficially. That's why I understand where we are told in the Quran that most people don't believe except while in a state of shirk. And shirk is when we are not even aware of it. So our first, let's say, worry is to realize that we are powerless, we are helpless if we're left on our own. So instead of trying to rely on ourselves to do this and not do that, just accept the reality and fall into prostration. That's our first thing to do. That humility is our first, what we need to, it's what comes from me, what I can acknowledge. The rest I cannot guarantee I will do this or I won't do that, because I am hoping it is done, it will be done unto me. I know that it's not from me and I can't guarantee anything. I can't guarantee I'll be here this evening.
Right, yes. Right.
So that's arrogance. If I think that, yes, now I am taking a new resolution, I am going to be like the most grateful, or I'm not going to get angry anymore, or something like that. But lo and behold, when we make peace with our reality, with that humility, with the fact that nothing is from us and everything is done unto us, we're more likely to accept things as they are. We're more likely to not get angry with things as much as we used to do. We're more likely to be more peaceful. But that's like the outcome. And that's not what we need to focus on. Inshallah. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا واخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إسرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين آمين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Jazakumullah khair, Sister Yamina, and everyone who joined us tonight. Inshallah, we will continue next week. And please mark your calendars for receiving your monthly seminar, February 15 in the Diyanet Center. If you are local or if you're able to join us, it will be from 9:30 to 3:45, and more information on Facebook. Please join us if you can. Assalamu alaikum.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Thank you.
جزاكم الله كل خير. السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام.